first Latino author to win the Pulitzer Prize in fiction for his book, The Mambo Kings, Play Songs of Love, Oscar Hijuelos is often described as a writer who captured the essence of the Cuban-American experience. Yet using his writing talent, he also found a way to convey a perspective of his own, a sense of belonging to two different worlds. One, built on memories and unfulfilled desires of his immigrant parents, and the other, he was born into, the world of bustling streets, overcrowded apartments, back alleys, and big dreams. This is the story of a CUNY graduate who became a Pulitzer Prize winner and his everlasting longing to belong. It was on Morningside Drive, incidentally, where the first pictures of me as an infant were taken. They showed this thin and rather delicately featured child with curling blonde hair in white booties and a dainty outfit, a passably cute toddler, but not the sort one would have associated at first glance with the usual expectations of what the offspring of a Cuban couple should look like, which is to say, anything but a little towhead Americano. Born in 1951 to a family of Cuban immigrants in the Morningside Heights neighborhood in Harlem, Oscar Hijuelos quickly learned the perks of being Cuban American. His father, Jose Pascual, worked as a cook in the luxurious Biltmore Hotel on 42nd Street. Known for his giving nature and his unquenchable thirst for nightlife, Pascual soon started attracting swarms of people to their family home at West 118th Street. On such occasions, Oscar later wrote, our living room facing the street became a cozy, if smoke-filled, dance hall replete with dim lights, music, food, and booze. For Oscar's mother, Magdalena, and her upper-class sensibilities, these events quickly turned into a form of torment. As if raising Oscar and his older brother in this unfamiliar world wasn't difficult enough, she was now asked to host parties for throngs of Cuban vagabonds. Nevertheless, she remained determined. If losing family wealth and status after her father's untimely death didn't break her spirit, her husband's overly social lifestyle wouldn't either. But something else almost did. At the age of 4, during his first trip to Cuba, Oscar contracted a life-threatening kidney disease. Upon his return to the U.S., Oscar spent a year recovering at St. Luke's Convalescent Hospital in Greenwich, Connecticut. This deeply disturbing experience left Oscar marked for life. It was during that long separation from my family that I became estranged from the Spanish language and therefore my roots, he later said. In the years following his recovery, Oscar became increasingly conflicted with what he described as his Cubanness. In his young mind, Cuba came to represent both an island infested with deadly illnesses that gave him what he would later name my Cuban disease, but also a place of fantasy, a magical refuge from the reality of his everyday life in New York, the reality that was starting to show its own signs of deterioration. Years of hard work in the kitchens of Hotel Biltmore made Oscar's father irritable and bitter. His health declined and his personal relationships suffered, particularly the one with his wife Magdalena. Racked with guilt and in a desperate attempt to protect her son from any additional harm, Magdalena kept Oscar closed off from the outside world. Spending most of his time in his family apartment, Oscar became an observer. Witnessing the hardships of the immigrant life firsthand, he started piling up layers of observations, memories, and thoughts that would one day find their ultimate expression in his writing. Oscar was only 17 when his father died from a stroke while working as a chef at his second job, Butler Hall's rooftop at Columbia University. The loss of his father remained a topic Oscar kept coming back to both in his emotional life and in his writing. Yet it will take another decade and some new experiences not far from his family home for him to start seeing himself as a writer. It was at the City University of New York that Oscar had his first experiences with writing. A product of New York City public schools, as he proudly referred to himself, he attended courses at Bronx Community College, Lehman College, and BMCC, until finally landing in the Bachelor of Arts program at the City College of New York. His first attempt was in the field of playwriting, but after taking a course in drama under the tutorage of Murray Schisgel, he learned that his verbally intense style of writing may be a better fit for prose. I do recall that it was the writing department's chairman, an affable and dapper fellow by the name of Frederick Tootin, who suggested that I submit a piece to one of the several fiction writers then teaching under the humble auspices of the City College banner, a list that in those days was rather stellar and serious in a New York City way. And the list was quite stellar. The group of visiting professors included such names as William Burroughs, Joseph Heller, Donald Barthelme, and Francine Duplessis Gray. And it was through City College that Oscar took a graduate-level writing workshop with Susan Sontag. After spending years studying under such icons of American literature and earning both his BA and MFA degrees from City College, Oscar was now a step closer to calling himself a writer. But it wasn't until he published his first novel that he dared to do so. And in 1983, when that novel finally came out, it was a fictional account about his upbringing.
And I realized that I was in that world. That's what was speaking to my soul. The more I did it, the more I felt like, hey, you can swear up and down and say that you're not the son of a Cuban cook who once worked at the Biltmore Hotel. Or you can say that, maybe your mother doesn't speak that English that well, but, you are her son. And, I started, instead of stepping away from it, which is what I did for a while in terms of my interior, I ended up embracing it all.
Embracing his Cubanness turned out to be the one missing ingredient Oscar needed to launch his career as a writer. Published in 1983, Our House in the Last World earned Oscar critical acclaim and won him a Rome Prize from the American Academy in Rome. But like with everything else in his life, being labeled a Hispanic American author came with its own hurdles. It was a very rare thing to see published work by any members of that primitive tribe from our urban jungles known as Los Latinos, he wrote in his memoir. I thought it would be years before I could write anything worthwhile. Even then, who out there would publish it? 6 years later, however, Oscar published a book that not only changed the narrative about Latino writers in New York, but also presented a very particular flavor of Hispanic American experience to the world. Published in 1989 and followed by a film adaptation in 1992, the Mambo Kings' play Songs of Love was an immediate international success. Set in New York in the 1950s, the story about two Cuban brothers desperately seeking to achieve the American dream through their music captured the imagination of millions of people around the world and opened the doors to a new, more familial interpretation of the Cuban American experience. Yet for Oscar, the Mambo Kings also served as a way of bringing together all the underlying themes of his own experience to a purely fictional plane. Themes of love, family, music, culture, and ultimately the theme of personal loss. In 1990, Oscar Hijuelos won a Pulitzer Prize in fiction, becoming the first Hispanic American writer to do so. In the following 2 decades, he would go on to produce another 6 novels, many of which would feature Cuban American protagonists and tackle topics of belonging, nostalgia, and the feeling of otherworldness. Over time, his fiction became more introspective, often dealing with topics of grief, faith, and even the possibility of afterlife. In his memoir, Thoughts Without Cigarettes, published only 2 years prior to his untimely death at the age of 62, Oscar revisited his upbringing in Morningside Heights and reflected on his career as a writer. I had taken so many disparate energies and hard emotions from our lives and turned them into something that so many people across these United States and the world might well enjoy and appreciate. And just like that, and on his own terms, Oscar Hijuelos, a little towhead Americano from Morningside Heights, became an essential part of the American literary canon.